All right, so 1.6, we're going to talk about the inverse functions. So you've probably heard us talk about inverses before. Addition and subtraction are inverses of each other. Multiplication and division are inverses of each other. They're like opposites of each other. When we are finding an inverse or verifying that two functions are inverses of each other, we need f of g of x to equal x and g of f of x to equal x. If these two things are true, then our functions are inverses of each other. We name an inverse by using a little -1, kind of like an exponent of -1, but it's not. It's just how we name the inverse. We can say f -1 of x. This is just saying that our function's an inverse, or you could say y -1. Either one works. They're both just saying that our function is an inverse. So when you find the inverse, make sure you name it as the inverse. You got to put that little inverse symbol there. So in example 3, we want to verify the inverses. So in order to verify them, we have to say that f of g of x is equal to x and g of f of x is equal to x. So we want to find our composition functions like we did yesterday. So let's start by finding f of g of x. For f of g of x, what's on the inside? G of x is going to be on the inside, so I'm going to take my function for g of x, put it inside the x in f of x. So we have 2 times the cubed root of x plus 1 over 2 cubed minus 1. Now remember, our goal is to see if this can simplify to just x. Be careful when you're simplifying. Don't go crazy with the simplification. Some things will cancel, some things can't cancel, so just be careful. Looking at our function here, do we see anything that'll cancel out or anything that simplifies? The cubed root and the cube, perfect. So the cubed root and the cubed cancel. So we have 2 times x plus 1 over 2 minus 1. Anything else cancel? The 2's. We're multiplying by 2 and dividing by 2 here. So those will cancel. So then we're just left with x plus 1 minus 1. Once we are just adding or subtracting, we can drop the parentheses. Then we have plus 1 and minus 1 that'll cancel. So we're just left with x. So we're off to a good start. That was step 1. We needed f of g of x to equal x. Now we have to make sure that g of f of x also equals x. So for g of f of x, what's on the inside here? F of x is going to go into g of x. So I'm going to take my f of x, plug it into the x in g of x. So here I have the cubed root of 2x cubed minus 1 plus 1 over 2. Now we're just adding here, so I don't need the parentheses around the 2x cubed minus 1, because we're just adding the 1 to it. If we were multiplying or something else other than addition or subtraction, you'd want to put it in parentheses. But here we don't need them because we're just adding. Does anything simplify here? Awesome. Let's start with the ones first. So we have that minus 1 and plus 1. That'll cancel. So we have the cubed root of 2x cubed over 2. Then we also see that we're multiplying by 2 and dividing by 2. So those will cancel. Bless you. So then we have the cubed root of x cubed. Bless you. Anything else? The cubed and the cubed root will cancel. So then we're just left with x. So since f of g of x equals x and g of f of x equals x, are they inverses? Yes. Yes, they are inverses. It says, which of the following functions is the inverse function of f of x? So it gives us two options. You can verify your function the same way we did in example 3, where we can find if f of g and g of f both equal x, or f of h and h of f both equal x. But it'll be less work for us to just find the inverse of f and see which one it matches. So we're going to kind of treat this as like a multiple choice question. Let's find our inverse for f. So first thing I want to do to find the inverse is what? Switch the x and y, perfect. So the f of x becomes x and the x becomes y. So I have x equals 5 over y minus 2. Now from here, we want to solve for y. What should I do next to solve for y? We could divide by 5 or multiply by 1/5, but it's not really going to help us because we're still going to have 1 over y minus 2. How could I get that y minus 2 out from the denominator? Awesome. We're going to multiply both sides by y minus 2. So the y minus 2 will cancel out on the right side. So we have y minus 2 times x is equal to 5. What should we do next? Again, how do I get the y all by itself? How do I now undo everything else on the left side? Awesome, we want to divide by x. So it's okay if your x and y are on the same side, but you then want to move the x to the other side. So we're going to divide by x. So y minus 2 is equal to 5 over x. And then what's the last step? Add 2, perfect. So we have y equals, be careful here because you're adding 2 to your fraction. It's not in the numerator. We're adding that to the 5 over x. So y equals 5 over x plus 2. So this is our inverse. So would that mean g or h is our inverse? H. So the next page talks about the graph of inverse functions. When we find the inverse graph, the inverse of a graph, we just switch the x's and y's. So here it has a comma b. So the a and the b switch. The b becomes the x and the a becomes the y. So when you find or when you graph the inverse, the x's and y's switch. So we're going to be finding the inverse algebraically. The first thing we want to do to find the inverse is switch the x's and y's. The x and y. We want to switch the x and y. Once we switch the x and y, the second thing we want to do is solve for y. We want to get the y all by itself. So let's look at example 1 here. F of x is just a fancy way of saying y. This is saying y equals. But to find the inverse, what's the first thing that we need to do? What do we just say step 1 is? Switch the x and y. So I'm going to switch the y to become x, and I'm going to switch the x to become y. So we have x equals 5 minus 3y over 2. What's the second thing we want to do to find the inverse? Get y by itself. We want to solve for y. So what would I do here to solve for y? We can multiply by 2. We're going to multiply both sides by 2. So it'll cancel out with the 2 that's in the bottom. So we have 2x is equal to 5 minus 3y. What should we do next? Subtract 5. So 2x minus 5 is equal to negative 3y. And then divide by negative 3. Perfect. So now the y is all by itself. We have 2x minus 5 over negative 3. This is equal to our inverse. So the very last thing we have to do is name our inverse. We have to put that little -1 symbol on the y to name the inverse. On WebAssign, it already gives you the f of -1, so you don't have to type that. You just have to type whatever the inverse is. But on a test or quiz, make sure you put the -1 symbol to name your inverse. This is not y equals, it's our inverse. Now, when we're dividing by a negative, you can leave it like this would be fine, but if we were dividing by something like -1, you may want to simplify. We can simplify this fraction a little bit more. WebAssign would take this as an answer. This is perfectly fine. I would take this as an answer, but just to show you guys how you could simplify more, we can split this up into 2 fractions. So we could say 2x over -3 and then minus 5 over -3. And we'd want to simplify the negatives that we have there. So it could be negative 2x over 3 plus 5 over 3. Because the double negative here would become a plus. You don't have to break it down like this. I'm just showing you you can. But this would also be an acceptable answer. So just to show you guys how you can break it apart. Any questions there? Let's look at number 2. What's the first thing we should do to find our inverse for number 2? Switch the x and y. So f of x is just a fancy way of saying y. So I'm going to switch that to be x, and x is going to be y. So I have x equals 3y plus 4 over 5. Second thing we want to do is solve for y. What would we need to do to solve for y here? Awesome. Multiply by 5 on both sides. It'll cancel out with our denominator here. We got 5x is equal to 3y plus 4. What should we do next? Awesome. Subtract 4. The order in which you do things matters. We can't just divide by 3 in this step because we still have that plus 4. So we want to get rid of the plus 4. So we're going to subtract 4. So we have 5x minus 4 is equal to 3y. And then what's the last step? Divide by 3. So we get 5x minus 4 over 3 is our inverse. What's the very last thing we need to do? Put the little -1. We got to name our inverse. So this would be our answer. So first thing we need to do is switch the x and y's. So I'm going to make g of x, and x is going to be y. So we have x equals the square root of 2y minus 3. Second thing we need to do is solve for y. What would we do here to solve for y? Square both sides. So the square root and the squared will cancel. We have x squared is equal to 2y minus 3. What would we do next? Add 3 to move it to the other side. So x squared plus 3 equals 2y. And then what do we do? Divide by 2. So we get x squared plus 3 over 2 is our inverse. What's the very last thing we have to do? Put the little -1. We got to name the inverse. This would be our answer.